Hey everybody, welcome. We got some good stuff going on today. Trying to get the bell tower in the background, but I think it's too bright today actually. So I'm going over the PowerPoint. Um, all the papers turned in so far was your midterm about a week ago. And I think the next paper is due in a week. So we'll get into the actual class and activities. So with assignments, I am letting everybody turn things in late. There's just a small penalty, but social work is a career paper, the attendance one, your second paper, and then online class. And the most recent one is due in 5 days. So if I edit the assignment, I'm actually going to call it the global social work paper. So I don't know why that didn't go in, but I'm going to go ahead and copy it and make sure you guys are here. Hello, Erica. All right, so yeah, the paper's in there for next week. Midterms should be up. Obviously, if you didn't have stuff turned in, you can still turn it in and turn that around quickly. So the three papers so far, the social work is a career paper, the values paper is the second one, and then the global social work paper. So we're kind of actually cruising up here on spring break soon. I think it's in like 2 or 3 weeks because Easter isn't until next month, but a lot of times they do the spring break like a few weeks before Easter. So with Chapter 7, we are getting into diversity. I know we've touched on some of these, but I wanted to go over them and show the different diversity and minority statuses. So in Chapter 7, they start off with racial diversity, and that's classification by your biological differences. After that, there's ethnic diversity, so that's classification by common traits and customs. Cultural diversity is more of a classification by your group membership. And the last one they have there is minority status. So this can often affect the socioeconomic well-being and even cultural acceptance and social acceptance. So they have a good chart that they show us. I'll try to zoom in larger, but this is kind of the breakdown throughout. And so they kind of have a generic classification. Hello, Tyler. I think you're in on your cousin's YouTube, and that's good. Erica's on hers. So we're going through diversity, and it kind of breaks down the, really it's like the Census Bureau. So some of this stuff is a little bit older. They're going to have the updated census from 2021 coming out probably in the next book publication. So you can identify as Asian, white, Black or African American, Alaska Native, American Indian, or Native Hawaiian, or other Pacific. And the last one is some other race. They say it's all other responses not included in the white, Black or African, American Indian, or Asian, Native Hawaiian, Islander race categories described above. Respondents reporting such entries such as multiracial, mixed, interracial, or Hispanic or Latino group. For example, Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, or Spanish in the response to the race question are included in this category. So there's several ways. When we got refugees from Chile, Guatemala, and Burundi, Africa at St. Leo's Food Pantry, there's several ways that some of them responded to being moved to America. So there was a civil war in Burundi, Africa, so they came over here for safety. But there's 5 responses, and alphabetically they're like acculturation, assimilation, accommodation, marginality, and rejection. Hello, Tiona Wiggins and Lyric Lewis. We're going over chapter 7, diversity. In the past, up until like the 1950s, acculturation was seen as the norm was assimilation. So you would become similar. You would have to speak English. You would have to gain U.S. citizenship. You would have to do all of these. Now with asylum status, we're noticing more acculturation, which is supposed to be the healthier response, where the folks from Burundi still speak Kirundi, and some of them learn English, and a few of them get U.S. citizenship. But to be a permanent resident of the United States, all they needed was that asylum status. So if they never pass the citizenship test, that's okay. They can still live here. But without becoming a citizen, you don't get access to like some of the affordable health care, food stamps, and other benefits that are afforded by the American system. But they would do what's called acculturation. So you acculturate, you keep some of your culture, and you blend into the American culture, rather than, as I said, in the 50s, it was more of an assimilation where you'd have to become almost similar, and that's not seen as good lately. So we also have some theories on cultural competence and self-awareness. And so with your new paper due next week, some of the questions come up about the relation to global social work papers. So those of you that would work with refugees internationally in the global social work paper and the global option, here's some of the trainings that we're going to get for when I worked at Lighthouse with different cultures and with refugees, when I worked with Catholic Charities. So they have cultural competence and self-awareness. So the National Association of Social Workers, we have standards for cultural competence. So our number 1 is being respectful and effective engagement. So with people of all cultures, with all languages, classes, races, ethnic backgrounds, religious, and other factors. And that includes, it doesn't mention poverty so much in here, but sometimes you do notice differences with that. So the importance of practitioner self-awareness. Remember, you guys can take the licensure exam your final semester here at Central State. So if you're a social work major, the semester you're graduating, which means January, February, you could take the licensure exam. And I recommend students take it then, because that means you could take it twice before you graduate. If you don't get a 70 and you need to take it again, you wait 3 months. You could take it again and have the license before you graduate. So that's what a lot of jobs are looking for. And then you'll do these trainings, one of them being the importance of practitioner self-awareness. And this will be our final exam, is doing a self-awareness paper, but it's foundational to practice with ethnic sensitivity. So understanding how you work with different creed, cultures, and religions, and that's important. So they are going to go through the different races in America now alphabetically. So the first one is Black Americans. It's 12.9% of the U.S. population, and cultural duality caused by historic oppression and powerlessness. But there is the strengths of adaptive strengths and kinship bonds, also religious bonds, and then regard for achievement. And that is on the first category. And the way that they find these systems out, and I'll try to turn it a little better so you can see some of this. Oops, ran to the end. Again, they're doing this ecological look on try to get it in there. So like there's the small one is personhood, emotional strength, personal acceptance, values, and relationships. The second one is a little bigger. That's the nurturing environment, family, church, and like self-help groups. And the last one is sustaining environment. So connecting folks to social resources, economic resources, and then even political resources. So finding ways to get people out to vote. If you are a full citizen in the US, you do have the ability to vote at the age of 18. So all of you will have that granted to you. I finished high school at 17, but I did vote in my first presidential election in 1996 when I turned 18. So most of you, unless if you're still 17, could vote. And we always recommend you practice that. So the next group is listed here, Asian Americans. That's only about 4.8% of the US population. They say values and beliefs influenced by Eastern philosophy and Eastern religion. So that would be China and India. And although it's only 5% of the US population, and if you know, United States has about 330 million people. So 5% of the population would be 15 million, and then accounting for that 330 million is about 16 million from Asia. And that's interesting because that includes both China and India, which is 1.5 billion and 1.4 billion respectively. Hey Siri, what's the population of India?
As of 2020, the population of India was 1,326,093,247.
So that's a large amount of folks on, if you look at a map, how small India is. I visited twice. It is very crowded compared to the US. Hey Siri, what's the population of China?
In 2021, the population of People's Republic of China was 1,442,965,000.
So these are really small countries that have a large population. So the US having only about 16 million of that large amount is interesting because like the square mileage is probably even smaller. Hey Siri, what's the square mileage of China? $4 million square miles, and then a coastline of 11,000. Hey Siri, what's the square mileage of Russia? Russia is also considered Asia, so that's a large part, but they have 7 million square miles. What's the population of Russia? It's about half of the US. So it's 145 million. But they have 7 million square miles. What's the square mileage of the United States of America?
I found this on the web.
So the US is a little bit smaller than, yeah, it's about half the size of Russia, 3.7 million miles squared. So we have a lot of refugees that come to the country. And this is kind of where you can get into the debate. This could be included in your paper if you're working with refugees. There's always debate of must they learn English? I don't know if some of you come from Spanish-speaking communities. You can type it in the chat. But if there's a lot of Spanish spoken, are you going to take Spanish to learn as a social worker? I did. It helps. You do have the option here to take it if you want a BA in social work. You don't have to take it if you get a BS in social work here. So it's up to you. But it does help if you're bilingual to get a job. And when I lived in El Salvador and Nicaragua, it was helpful to learn it while I lived down there. So again, working with a multicultural world really now. So that global social work paper is launching us off into the facts of what we do in the multicultural world. And So of those 17 million Asian Americans, they say some of the stats from the book say it's a heterogeneous group, region of origin, the social class, generation of immigration, so the past 100 years, and then the circumstances of immigration and resettlement. So many came over here from both India and China, and then Russia. We have some here that are on a student visa. Oh, cool. Yeah. It will help if you take Spanish if you've had 4 years in high school, because as I've mentioned before, at St. Leo's Food Pantry, they often have to use me to speak Spanish, even at my private practice. Hey, how's it going? How are you? Yeah. We're going over diversity and immigration and assimilation. We were just saying, question in the chat was like, working, your next paper is on global social work and like working with folks from all different races, cultures, and religions. Will you take a foreign language? That was like the question put out there. Will you take Spanish or French or Russian before you graduate? Okay. Did you take in high school? Okay. I did too. And I was saying, so we have the option to take it here. Like I lived in Central America, and right now that's a large percentage. We were just going through the stats of how many folks live in the US. 5% are Asian American, 13% are Black Americans, and then the last one is Native American. So it's about the same. 5 million people. Oh wait, 5 million instead of 5%. Okay. So it's about 1%, 1.5% of the US population is Native American. That's another big resource social workers do work with. They're divided amongst 565 tribes. So it's probably like 100,000 per tribe, or maybe 10,000 per tribe. And then Alaska and Native groups. Some of the work you'll do as a social worker with Native Americans, there's high unemployment and poverty off the reservation. And hello, Jalen Bennett. Welcome. So yeah, we have Lyric Lewis said, I think I'll take Spanish because I took it 4 years in high school. So it is hard to learn about. It is hard to figure out. But so the last two folks, diversity-wise in America, that are listed in the book, Native Americans, they have a perception of wellness as a balance of spirit, body, and mind and environment. And then parallel structures of tribal welfare councils and the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And then the last one is the largest group. So this is where Spanish could help you a whole lot. It's 16% of the US population, and is expected to be a quarter of the US population by 2055. So it's going to be a large part of our population fast, and it's growing because it includes several nationalities. Do you have any Spanish-speaking communities in the city you're from? So it's getting big. Which city were you at again? Okay. Yeah, Chicago has like a little India, little China, little. It's kind of like segregated by nationality, isn't it? And then is the South Side like African American, and then it's like India, China. They like scatter all over the place, kind of. Okay. I remember visiting with our social work program at Xavier, and then also with Miami University. So with Spanish speakers, we have Mexican, Puerto Rican, and then even Cuban Americans. So again, you have the option to learn Spanish here. You can get a social work degree without taking a foreign language. Some degrees you have to take a foreign language, though. Do you know if your major you have to take a foreign language? Biology. I know, I was wondering. Are you good on all the papers so far? You've got yours turned in, and then we have the next one isn't due till next week. It was the global social work paper. Due next week. Oh, right. Okay. That's cool. Well, that's kind of the link here is like globally, what are all the different race, religions, and creeds we work with? So Hispanics are a large proportion that are migrant laborers. So Chicago, a lot of them come from Canada, I've heard. Like they actually come. How far away is Canada from you guys? Do they have to do the boat or do you have to drive through Detroit? Okay. So it's like 3 or 4 hours away. You got to drive around the lake and then cross at the Windsor border, I think. Windsor. Okay. And that's where a lot of the new immigrants come from in the north. And the south, obviously, they can just walk across the border, Mexico to Texas, Arizona, and California, I believe, if I'm naming them all. So they have, Hispanics have a large value of trust in persons rather than institutions. So they kind of take care of themselves, grow their own food, and see the difference. Last few slides are religious diversity before I get into the quick film. So we've got religion in today's world. There's also religion in the community. You guys have a lot of different religions in Chicago? Okay. Religion and spirituality, and then implications of religious and spiritual diversity. So here's some of the resources for a religious community. Like it's a natural support network. Like at St. Leo's, we have a food pantry, and we also have parishioners and several other. There's one I wanted to show you guys.
Funding for this program is made possible by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Thank you.
Gentlemen, we come to you today to thank you for this meal.
Sharing a meal is the most basic of human needs and comforts.
What's for lunch?
I have grilled chicken breast, baked potatoes with broccoli,
Yes, I think I'll do mac and cheese.
and we also have yams.
Mac and cheese. More peanut butter.
But for too many of us, that everyday question, what's for lunch, has no easy answer. In Western Pennsylvania, 300,000 people are food insecure.
That means that they don't always know where their next meal is coming from.
So there's been times where, yeah, it's been hard to kind of keep food on the table.
I have learned how to be sparing.
Imagine what it feels like. This crisis is not only about money, it is also a problem of geography and access.
Clarendon is a food desert.
The grocery store's closed down. You have to go far to get healthy stuff.
We also talk about food swamps. Those are communities that do have food available, but it's typically fast food or unhealthy food.
In our land of plenty, where a fast bag of food can be found most anywhere, there always have been hungry people.
And I see the suffering of people.
And then came the pandemic.
Each one of those was a family.
You know, you don't want people to notice you're going through.
It was a giant spotlight and a wake-up call.
In this richest of countries, people woke this morning to empty shelves. This is the story of families who struggle to fill them and of many neighbors working to help. In pantries, on farms.
We're able to donate enough apples to feed 25,000 households.
In community gardens.
I think we have to learn how to feed ourselves.
So if we don't get this right, every aspect of our lives will be affected by this.
Many families can't afford healthy food, and some can't get to it. Food insecurity has reached a crisis.
There are whole communities that are starved.
Do you guys have a greenhouse in the biology lab building? Yeah, where they grow food. Like, yeah, the greenhouse is like when you come in the very front, and it's like all glass, and it has like the flowers. So you're saying you do think you have one, right? So we're trying to start some of this food insecurity stuff here too. As believe it or not, the pandemic. Like if you've noticed prices going up with food. Have you noticed anything you buy that's like real expensive now? What items in specific? I always ask that. Chips got real expensive. Like doubled. Okay. What else? I'm sorry, I cut you off. Meat is really expensive. I'm lucky I'm a vegetarian. What'd you say? It is, and so you do know they have free access to food at the counseling center across the street if you need stuff. Yeah. So you walk right there into that building to where Dr. Hunt is the head of counseling. They have a study area. They have art therapy place, a music therapy place, a food pantry for all kinds of snacks, chips, and any food that you need right there. You just walk across, you sign in, and you get it. All right. Oh yeah, milk's gotten. Alexandra Washington said that.
So I can't hit it yet then.
In a centuries-old log cabin in a quiet, leafy corner of Greene County, Marilyn and Billy Sisk are enjoying a late summer breeze and thinking about lunch.
I would make a curry or maybe a soup.
Whatever Marilyn decides to cook, she'll need some help filling the pantry. For the first time in their lives, the couple have found themselves food insecure, a bland euphemism for a serious problem that has cast a shadow of worry over their lives. They met over the internet, Billy in South Carolina and Marilyn in Great Britain. Married and back in the States, they both had jobs. Marilyn was a retail clerk and Billy a bricklayer.
I like to do all these arches and circles and, all the fancy work pretty much I like to do because it's like art to me.
And then a jolt of bad luck.
We had a car accident. We got rear-ended while we were stopped at a red light, and he literally wrecked his rotator cuff.
Billy is now on disability and Marilyn has a bad back.
So we've gone from being a two-wage family to relying on benefits.
The last 2 years has just been horrible for me because I can't do nothing.
Today, Marilyn will drive a few miles from home to get help. She will have lots of company. The Corner Cupboard Food Bank provides hundreds of food boxes every month. On this day in August, Marilyn waited in a line that stretched across the Greene County Fairgrounds.
Rebecca, you need a break?
Yes, thank you.
Last year, when we were trying to get his disability, we had not one penny coming into the house. We just went to one car. We really pulled the belts in.
So how'd you get on? A lot of people there?
Yeah. Here, you can carry these sweet bags in with your
those
and you let them down. We have beans, peanut butter, corn, 2 corn. For 2 years now, we've had to learn how to survive. I mean, people think, they see what we live in and they think, oh, they're all right. 2 clean beans, you've still got to pay your bills, regardless of whether you've got an income coming in or not. So we always make sure that what's owed is paid first. Vegetable soup, you have to have the internet here because there's no service, no cell phone service to speak up. Fruit and nut mix. So the phones only work through the internet. Your HT milk, that lasts. So food comes very far down the line.
The boxes held enough food to keep Marilyn and Billy fed for weeks. cereal for breakfast and bread for lunch, and canned beef for dinner. Just enough to give them one less thing to worry about.
So yeah, these food banks, they are a godsend. Especially to people, young unmarried mothers, things like that. They survive on these things. They need them. It can happen to anybody.
In a backyard in Glassport, the sound of chickens sizzling on the grill is mixing with the sound of drumming wafting up from the basement. While Veronica Baker tends to Sunday supper, her son DeMarcus is getting in some noisy practice.
It doesn't bother me. I don't mind it. A lot of times, I
This early fall afternoon found Veronica and her children in some of the most difficult times they'll ever face. Veronica, a single mother, has breast cancer, a health crisis made worse by food insecurity.
You have a secure income and you think you're okay, and then out of the blue, you're not okay. You don't know how you're gonna feed your family.
A year ago, this family was thriving. Mom working as a medical biller, daughter Triana finishing her senior year of high school, and DeMarcus playing in a band. And then the cancer, the fear that came with it.
For the most part, I try not to show it.
What followed was a cascade of events that hit hard.
Then I have to call off and go to chemo, or when I have to do testing or anything like that, that shortened my hours.
Smaller paychecks mean less money to buy food, which for a cancer patient has to be the right food.
They said if you switch up your diet, that does help you fight cancer. They cost so much. It don't make any sense that the healthier food costs more than the food that's not healthy.
Tomato sauce, soups.
Veronica is loading up on groceries at the Healthy Food Center at Allegheny General Hospital. She was referred here by her doctors, a kind of healthy food prescription based on the understanding that food is medicine.
These are always a little bit different, but it looks like we got nice cantaloupe, some onions, potatoes, cucumbers.
The food she'll take home will help fight her illness and feed her kids.
So that stretched out my food for us, because that way when I am coming up short, that helped me out where we're able to keep food in the house. I would feel less than a parent not to be able to feed my kids. That would make me feel really bad. Kind of encourage them to just keep focused on their things that they have going on. And to just let them know that, I will be all right. I'm still fighting.
Among the most dramatic images from the early days of the coronavirus pandemic were the lines of cars inching their way toward the food bank. The scenes were alarming, but those on the front lines know that food insecurity has long been a major problem in our community.
There's so many people who are struggling. The mission of the food bank. This is so important to me, that no child goes to bed hungry, that no senior has to choose between buying medicine and buying food.
That dilemma is part of daily life for as many as 300,000 people in Western Pennsylvania. About a third of them are children.
Wow.
In Duquesne, the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank is moving millions of pounds of fresh and packaged food through its massive and chilling warehouse. From here, the food is trucked to a network of smaller food pantries in both urban and rural areas. The goal is to close what the food bank calls the meal gap, which reflects how many households go without any one of the 3 healthy squares a day: breakfast, lunch, or dinner. When the food bank started keeping track in 2015, the gap in Western Pennsylvania was 54 million meals that never got to a family's table. Since then, the food bank has been able to supply 35 million meals a year, but there's still a great need.
You know, there's so many people who could very easily, with one car repair, a medical bill, any other kind of extra expense, will find themselves in line.
And it's not just about money.
And that was a very, very limited view of what food insecurity means.
Audrey Morell directed a study called the Food Abundance Index. It took a comprehensive approach to the ways in which Pittsburgh's neighborhoods are cut off from healthy food.
But when we started really pulling back the layers and looking at it from the complexity that it is, it really means paying attention to not just food sources, but food policy and food access and health and well-being.
And that means providing the right kind of food where it's needed.
So we want quality food, we want fresh food, we want healthy food, not just any food.
412 Food Rescue is a nonprofit whose volunteers retrieve and then share food that would otherwise be wasted. Their trucks arrived in the city of Clairton around the same time the coronavirus arrived.
Let's see. Oh, onions look like. Okay. Oh, potatoes. Those are some nice looking potatoes. I'm glad I stopped actually, because this is nice food. I was coming up for my nieces. They're single parents. People deem this as, you come up here, it's a handout, but you never know what situation may arise to where we might all need help.
Early summer brought spikes in coronavirus cases up and down Western Pennsylvania. In Erie, Allegheny Health Network joined with the local pantry to get food to those quarantined after positive COVID tests.
They don't know how they're gonna go out and get food for their children because the whole family is now in isolation and in quarantine.
There's a lot of stress and anxiety about what's going on in the world. And it just helps give a little peace of mind to be able to feed somebody who's not able to get the food for themselves.
And along with the need comes a stigma. The pandemic landed on even financially stable families, causing layoffs, illness, and isolation.
Almost overnight, we saw a dramatic increase in the number of people in need of food assistance. They were coming to our front door, they were asking for help, they were desperate.
In the 12 months before the pandemic, the food bank distributed 40 million pounds of food. During the first 3 months of COVID alone, the food bank already had provided 25 million pounds.
Each one of those cars in that long line was a family whose livelihood and whose sense of well-being had been disrupted. You know, I can remember growing up, and Sunday dinner was really a family time. It was a time for us to all sit down and gather and make connections. Those are part of the building blocks of who we are as families. Imagine what it means when families can't provide that, when parents can't provide that for their children. Imagine what that feels like.
The hunger has been around us all along. The pandemic made us take notice.
I see it as the alarm clock went off. There have been people who've been crying for this, and there's no reason in this country that people should go to bed hungry.
For Melvin Long and his family, there will be fresh food on the table.
You know what we're having for dinner today? You're gonna have potatoes and onions.
Clairton, Pennsylvania is a city with at least 18 churches, but not one full-service grocery store.
And the business just wasn't here, so they closed up.
Donna Hudson grew up here when Clairton was a bustling town with a busy steel plant and 20,000 residents, and just about every one of them could walk to a food store.
We had Kroger, we had Food Mart, we had the A&P, we had Haynes Supermarket.
All the stores up here was open. Everything
that I ever needed was right up here on this main street.
At one time, there were 8 grocery stores in town. As people moved out, so did the stores. The last one closed in 2004.
I would say this is definitely a food desert.
A food desert is a community that doesn't have a full-service grocery store.
Well, food deserts are typically in lower income communities where a grocery store chain has decided it's not viable.
Remove a grocery store from a community that's already struggling, and the residents will find themselves stranded. In Clairton, 28% of residents live at or below the poverty line. As many as 14% of residents don't own a vehicle. For them, the closest supermarket can be a jitney or bus ride away.
And then how did you get everything back home?
In both of my arms. 5 bags on each arm.
Dalia has a car now and drives out of town to shop. But families without transportation rely on dollar stores, which are convenient and inexpensive, but lacking in healthy products.
I'm not saying that dollar stores don't play a role, but they cannot be the primary or the only source of food in the community. They're often filled with highly processed food.
And to make matters worse, food deserts often are adjacent to food swamps, communities with few or no grocery stores, but many fast food outlets.
Within $5 to $10, you could feed a family. But the problem is the nutritional value. It may be filling, but it's not nutritionally filled. So the body itself is starving for micronutrients and macronutrients.
Dr. Amit Bhargava treats patients with diabetes and other conditions related to poor diet.
Patients may present with obesity, they may present with hypertension. We can tell a patient to eat more fruits and vegetables, for example. But if they do not have access or limited access to fruits and vegetables, then they're not able to do so.
He's especially worried about children who grow up in food deserts.
Children's palates are being damaged because they're being exposed to certain foods that they get accustomed to. When you are exposed to this early on, I think that becomes your way of life and perception of what eating should be like.
Put one on your plate just to make it look like you're eating.
Veronica Baker knows her son is a picky eater, but since her breast cancer diagnosis, both her children are learning the importance of healthier meals.
There's a huge difference when you have any type of cancer and eat healthy.
Okay, so could you use a box of fresh produce, just an assortment of fruits and vegetables?
So if you want to look at food as medicine, the staff here are the pharmacists, and they're counseling and teaching about the medicine.
All right, and our canned fruit here, you get to choose 4 of these.
I've seen my patients who have been diabetic who are no longer diabetic because they've changed their diet, they've got access to better food, and they exercise more.
That kind of help is essential, not just in hospitals, but in food deserts. Big supermarket chains say they can't survive in towns like Clairton. People here are finding other ways to solve the problem.
Okay, is there anything else you would like? That's it?
The nonprofit Produce Marketplace is one example. Community groups joined forces to raise money to bring nutritious food to Main Street.
I would use the word fresh. Whether it's fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, fresh cut cheeses, no soda pop, no chips, no candy, nothing like that. We're just filling in the gap of freshness for all of our residents.
A few blocks away, people are bringing healthy food to Clairton in another way by growing it themselves.
And these are called what again?
These are called pole beans.
Madge Bristow Norman is tying up beans in her plot at the Clairton Community Garden.
As I grow my garden, I will share my garden. Because there are those that don't have the means to get a nice, ripe tomato.
Small gardens like these have become part of the urban landscape. Some are tucked away in backyards.
These ones right here are purple cayennes,
Every corner of Levante Allen's backyard in Pittsburgh's Homewood neighborhood is making food.
You don't see a lot of gardens. You don't see a lot of greenery like this in this neighborhood. Gardening isn't as scary as people think. I definitely encourage it because it gives you a new freedom, a new sort of authority in your life where you're like, I can just go outside and get whatever I need for my family.
Homewood has been without a grocery store for 25 years. You might call this greenhouse an oasis in the middle of a food desert.
We say food apartheid because it is a part of systematic injustice towards Black people and brown people.
Rockweed Bay is standing in a green space that only 3 years ago was a blighted vacant lot. The Homewood Black Urban Garden acquired the land from the city of Pittsburgh and got to work.
It took us all that season just to keep the brush down. We started planting last year, and this year we'll be planting all year long.
I love okra, not only for its pods, the vegetable itself, but the flower.
My younger children, since they've been doing this since they were toddlers, is they have a love for the food that they grow. And last year we started with 2 beehives, and this year we had 4.
All of it is tended by volunteers from the neighborhood, and then sold to the community at a weekly farm market.
They have the best collard greens in the city.
The group plans to open a nonprofit grocery store here in 2021. It will be another example of what resourceful people can do when they work together.
We can't always rely on outside institutes to help us. We have to take community responsibility and leadership ourselves.
It's one of my favorite things to be able to walk through the orchard, especially in the evening time. The air is cool.
Steve Johnston is the 6th generation to live on Apple Castle Farm in Lawrence County.
My great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, my great-great-great-grandfather, they're able to have the same experiences of growing fruits and growing vegetables, providing them for our local community.
Apple Castle is one of 40 farms that donate fruits and vegetables to the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank.
Sometimes because they produced more than they can sell, and sometimes it's they produce products that are smaller than a retail venue would prefer.
Apples, peaches, sweet corn, and other crops make their way from here to thousands of homes across western Pennsylvania.
Even where I live, I'm in the middle of the country, and there's lots of food insecurity.
Why do you think there are not more home gardens?
It just takes so much time and effort, and we've just gradually moved away from growing our own produce. Farming in general is a very hard lifestyle. There's a lot of hours, there's a lot of demands on you. However, it is really rewarding to be part of agriculture, to be part of an industry that's able to help feed our country.
Here's a good one.
In Carmichael's Greene County, 6-year-old Ibby Kelly and her mom are in their garden picking tomatoes.
You wanna check out tomatoes over here too?
It's not just large farms that keep food pantries stocked with fresh produce. Smaller family gardens are helping too.
We have 105 acres, and this is just our quarter-acre garden that we use to raise food for our own freezer through the winter, and then enough extra plants that we can share.
There's one right over here that's the darkest one of all.
And so more than anything, I want to be able to teach my 2 daughters what it is to share and support others. You got it.
It is likely that vegetables grown in this garden will one day be on dinner plates in that log cabin a few towns away. While lunch was cooking on the stove, Marilyn was painting a landscape mural. It's been a way to bring in some extra money during lean times.
It was only the painting that kept our head above water.
And if there comes a time when even the painting income dries up, Marilyn and Billy know their community will be there to help.
I won't say we would starve to death without them, but they are a big help to us. A very big help.
For generations, artists have captured the warm, essential bond between family and food.
Food is much more powerful than just nutrients. You know, food is community, the ability of people to be able to gather around food.
In our country, there's more than enough land, more than enough sunshine and blue sky to grow the food, and more than enough helpers to feed every one of us.
We don't need to produce more food, we just need to be better at distributing it and getting it into the hands of people that need it.
It's living into what we're called to be and do in loving our neighbors.
There's no reason for anyone to go hungry, especially our kids.
It's not just feeding families, but it's helping families to thrive. So if we don't get this right, every aspect of our lives will be affected by this. But I have confidence we will get this right.
Please continue looking after our family, protecting us. Amen.
So, you guys may have noticed in your communities, there's food pantries. I don't know if you guys have them in Chicago or not. Maybe you have food abundance in Chicago and nobody needs a food pantry. A lot of times churches will do it, different folks, and that was kind of why I segued over from spirituality to the food insecurity thing, because it's actually supposed to get worse. So you were saying like chicken's expensive now, and like milk. Alexandria Washington mentioned that, and chips, which I'd recommend just going straight across the street when you walk out our main door, direct across, and ask for Sonia Hunt. Tell her I sent you. But there's a need, and we're noticing it on campus. So we're trying to find ways to, if people want to grow their own food, like, do you have a favorite vegetable that you eat? Oh yeah, that's a perennial vegetable, so it comes back every year. I grow that at my house. I don't know if we're growing over here. I saw that we have beehives, but we're trying to start like lettuce and squash, and I have beehives. Just one. I used to have two, but it's hard to keep them alive when it gets cold. I have 4 chickens because they lay an egg every 26 hours. So if you ever eat eggs, it's kind of a good deal. And then you throw out all your scraps to the chickens, and then they turn it into an egg for you. They even eat my leftover cat food, like when the cats don't eat the like wet food. Yeah, they eat cat food. They're omnivores, so they eat meat, they'll eat chicken, but I won't feed them chicken. That's kind of messed up. I'll feed them like beef and mostly vegetables, like an old salad or whatever. So, and it is a spiritual thing, like learn how to grow food. Do you have any family members that ever grown food or had a garden? Has she ever done asparagus? Yeah. Okay. Okay. They're saying we should all double our efforts doing that this year, because they said right now, you know how we have this war going on in Ukraine and Russia? They said like 25% of our corn and wheat comes from Russia, and so prices will really go up, like a lot. I heard gas just hit $3.80 today. Is that how much it is on the corner? Okay. You're going to have me look it up right now. So gas, I have this little app that tells me like where the cheapest gas is around. Gas Buddy, gasbuddy.com. Hey Siri, turn on internet. So somebody wrote, I have one now. I think that's a garden, but I'm only growing herbs and strawberries. Those are good. Those herbs come back, and then strawberries keep coming back. And sometimes growing it indoors is helpful. So we're trying to do a lot of it in Central and do some horticulture therapy and the ability to like grow your own food. And some people do see it as a spiritual thing. So religion and social work, we also honor religious diversity. These are the last few slides, so I can finish you guys 15 minutes early again. Religiously, we've had a historic role. The tenets of major religions are compatible with social work. So like if you look at our code of ethics and everything we do, usually religious people become social workers. Last diversity slide is about sexual diversity. It includes gay men, lesbian women, bisexual, and transgendered persons. Some of the issues as a social worker you could work with is if they're coming out, homophobia, adolescent identity and development, and then workplace discrimination. And then we're working with diverse populations. So here's, as social workers, what we do, and you can put these into your global social work paper. So like oppression, liberation, powerlessness, exploitation, we try to get everyone to parity. On the left side is what we challenge, like powerlessness and oppression. We try to replace them with liberation and empowerment. Acculturation, we try to replace with maintenance of culture. And then stereotyping, we try to replace with unique personhood. Oh, it's $3.69 right now in the corner. Yep, it just went up. Today, 4 miles away, it's $3.59. That's probably in Xenia. And then the cheapest, right now, somewhere it's $3.23. I don't know where that is. Sometimes I have to look at, you can do the list or you can click on map to find cheap gas. And I usually, gosh, where would the cheap gas be around here? Xenia, I guess, has some. Do you need to fill up? Oh, yeah. Oh, look, way out here. I bet you that's Sam's. It's $3.23. Oh, yeah, that's the Indian place. It's called Maharaja. It's 5 miles away from here. On 1902 West 2nd Street in Ottawa Drive. I think I filled up there a year ago. And the one thing is it's really cheap. Like I put on, you know how you can like set it to just like autofill and keep flowing? It never turned off. And I looked over and like 3 gallons had poured out on the ground. It was when it was like covered in snow. But that's like, yeah, it's on the other side of Xenia. I don't know if it will still be that cheap because sometimes they're behind. It says it's still $3.25 like here at Circle K, 7 miles away. So again, you have to drive 7 miles to get it. Yeah, in Dayton, it's still like $3.31, $3.29, $3.39, $3.19. Far. Oh, you already have to go there? Okay. So like Costco is still $3.24 there. They usually don't go up till the end of the day. Costco, which my friend said you can just go up and say, I lost my card, or my parents have the Costco card, and they'll let you fill up there. Kroger's. Yeah, so Dayton has all the cheap prices right now, basically. That is all I have. I wanted to finish 15 minutes early so you guys could have 15 minutes to work on your paper if you needed it. So that is all that I've got. We had a few other. Poverty in the pandemic. That's a long one. But there's another 25-minute one I wanted to show you guys. American Nightmare, 10 years after the financial crisis. And For Sale, The American Dream, Fault Lines. That was another one. So I'll show you guys those next week. Remember your paper. And if you've already started, that's good, as there's a lot to write on international social work. And that's all I have. We've just got lots of stuff going on. So have a good one. I don't see any questions in the chat, so email them if you guys do have them anytime, or come by